I'm making. Hello, hello, and welcome to HR Lunch Bunch. This is the month of March, and what's next for HR is our topic. I have a whole group of people. Now, side note, I can't see any of them, but their names are all there. So I know that there's some people here in the room with me. If you don't know who I am, my name is Deborah Jeffries. I serve as the Vice President of HR Answers, and I have been here for a while now. My next anniversary is coming up next month, and the company just turned 39 years old. So we're very proud of that. HR Lunch Bunch happens usually the first Wednesday of every month. This month, we have done a second Wednesday of the month only because there was a conference last week. So with that said, we pick a different topic. I'm open to topics. I ask that you please weigh in and let me know. You can use the chat box. That's always open for part of our discussion if you don't want to unmute yourself. But let me know what topics are of need, of relevance. What are you discussing inside your organizations or your local HR chapters, et cetera, et cetera. So pick a topic, have a conversation. I want us to talk. I want to bring up stuff. I want you to weigh in. What are you doing? What would you like to do? What questions do you have of the people who are doing it? Let's learn from each other. Share some of those pitfalls too would be lovely. So when I say what's next for HR, my goal is to, hello and welcome, be able to talk about things that I shared with you just moments ago, as well as maybe we could even have a little fun, maybe just a little. All right, so what's next for HR? If you, David, were here last time, I actually changed up the thought process of the order of the conversation just because we got this much going on. I'm a pretty authentic person. I will acknowledge where there have been faux pas or challenges. So those of you who weren't with us, I'm so glad that you're here. But I thought I would again flip the content because some folks were kind enough to kind of continue the conversation on a little bit. So I thought I'd start with the end in mind and begin at the end. So I actually had some kind of broke the content up into kind of two thought processes about what we could talk about. Humanity being one element, the employee experience, how our employees are experiencing HR, but the organizations, what are they saying? What are they doing? There was a report that came out not too long ago, and I'm sure you have been talking about this just like we are talking about this with our clients. Wellness, employee well-being is like numero uno on the plate of what's next for HR. And it's not like it's necessarily a new concept. I think the pandemic really brought that home for us. I think it was kind of always there, but this is really saying, okay, now it's not just our health benefits, quote unquote, but all of them. And only 29% of those surveyed report that they're very satisfied with the steps that their company is even taking to address employee well-being and mental health. So here are some of the stats that came out of Arbinger's study that, again, just recent to brand new, came out at the beginning of this year. What do you guys think about what they're saying regarding the benefits? You can, no, never assume anything, Deborah, especially with the way things have been going, because I'm trying to share my screen. And why do I have a feeling I didn't do that? Anyone? Anyone? Because I wasn't. Okay, you know what? I am having one of those days, aren't I? Doesn't matter. I started in the right place. Now you should be able to see the screen. Talk to me a little bit about when you look at these numbers, what's going on in your world? What's happening in your workplaces? And I'm happy to read what's in the chat box. So if you want to use that as an option, you certainly can. Otherwise, you can unmute yourself and, or is there things that you are doing that are like not on this list in terms of ideas and suggestions around the wellness area, or how you're doing something that is paying off good dividends that you'd like to share with the group?
I can share regarding the team building workshops activity
Okay,
a little
please.
bit on a personal level, just being new to the company that I'm at within the last year. they find they very much encourage us to go to workshops and seminars. And in my previous experience with employers, they also did that with employees, and that was a huge morale booster. Plus, they're getting a lot of really good education, and it's really great for kind of building your network around your specialty as well.
Gotcha. Do you mind telling us? I mean, you guys do not have to tell us where you work, but even if you tell us the industry or approximately how many employees, because one of the things I didn't say that I probably should have said, and this is an opportunity to kind of network with each other. So, and you certainly can obviously direct message each other in the chat. You can then connect with each other after the programming, and and we used to meet in person. This has given people around the state an opportunity to kind of join us, and there's no drive involved. But truly, HR people being able to kind of dig in, and we're not going to a program where we have to listen to that and then we got to eat lunch and all. Just kind of dive in a little bit. So network as much as you want, kind of behind the scenes, in front of the scenes. But if you feel comfortable, let us know. Thanks, Lisa. I appreciate that. Anybody else? Are these numbers like surprising to you or
Hi, Deborah. It's Jen. It's
hi?
Jennifer Jones. Hi. So we've got, I'm sure we have about 1,800 employees at this point. And as like working for the state, although we are, a specific branch of the government, so it's a little different than the executive. But we are just actually, this is very relevant to what's happening with us, is that we're going and meeting with many managers and staff, doing an outreach and going to these regional roundups. And we are highlighting specifically all the things that we just see that are underutilized. I don't know if it's due to just not hearing it or just being unaware of benefits, like all sorts of benefits, just little known, especially like highlighting the new things that are offered through each of our medical plans, as well as the Canopy Employee Assistance Program, and just kind of putting ourselves in that place as an employee and saying, this is kind of what is really interesting, or I would have loved to known this myself, ages ago. And it's not just for our new employees, it's for those that have been here forever and just aren't aware of the immense possibilities and opportunities each of these plans offer. It's not just PEB as a governing body. They also have some things, but it's actually each person's medical plan. And there's many, many ways to pursue like wellness activities, not, be it mental, financial, just coaching, like there's a lot of stuff. So we see that need, and we'll let you know how it goes.
Okay,
We're
good.
excited, but we absolutely, it is a hot topic for sure.
Gotcha. That's nice. Good luck to that.
Thanks.
That'll be wonderful. All right, so just we've got plenty of topics to talk about. So I did put one little additional note in there, and just in terms of a lot of organizations are experiencing, I mean, they're challenged by employees leaving, and because of stress or burnout, work overload. We've been hearing more about layoffs, which we'll talk a little bit about. Um, but in but employees are looking for, I mean, organizations are looking for production. Oh, sure they are. Production. They're looking for results. And sometimes employees are feeling like employers don't care. And employers, like, they don't care about how it's going to get done, just make it done, get it done. And I think that we as organizations, those that are operating kind of with heart and some compassion and whatnot, the answer is we've got to be able to be really thoughtful about what is it's looking like. People are talking about 4-day work weeks. Okay, are we condensing things? Automation has given us the opportunity to get more done in less time. Well, if you think about it, that's been progressing constantly over decades. So but we're still working 5 days a week. So what is the expectation? How much can one person get done? How much is automation or pre-programming helping us or pushing us to get even more and more done? What does that look like? So, and having had a situation where I spent some time with college age students, and it was all around sitting for the SHRM certification exam. They were telling me about how much stress they were experiencing. But these folks, they were not talking about being college students with stress. They were talking about how much stress they even experienced in high school. So for me, it was just an eye opener because I was thinking to myself, well, some of that's just life. But we all come at this at different speeds and different ways and different situations and different experiences. And not all of us deal with it the same way. And we can't take any of that for granted that anybody is doing okay and that we know how everybody's doing. And so really teaching our managers and our supervisors how to check in with people, how to truly check in and how to notice things. So I think that that's something that, yes, we're talking about prioritizing it and what's out there and what we're offering, but also how to notice and pay attention and address when someone really isn't. Or is it us that's struggling? Is it them? And how do we know and how do we pay attention? Because sometimes I think some of us in HR can be guilty, even compassion fatigue. Give, give, give. Do. Help, help, help everybody. But we're not taking good care of ourselves. And that's a topic for a whole nother time. Um, so what about remote work? I've got some clients that are there, some of their departments are fully remote. We're talking about like a hybrid benefit, right? And yet at the same time, I'm hearing more and more people talk about, nope, coming back to work. We're making everybody come back to work. And just a week ago today, an organization who has about 1,200 employees, at one point in time, like before the pandemic, it was they all came to different states. They all came every day of the week, every day of the week, because there's a portion of their business that's a call center. And now all they're asking for the majority of their departments, because the call center needs to be in there 1 day a month, and the employees are balking. So is it an option? Is it treated as a benefit? Because it's being negotiated. You probably offered a job and someone said, no, thank you. It has to be remote or not at all, or some kind of. So what say you? What's working? What's not working? What's going on in the hybrid remote arena? Is this going to be that awkward silence time?
Hey Deborah, this is Teresa.
Hi, Teresa.
We
Nice
have
to have you.
this, thank you. We have various all over the scope. So the management, executive management would much prefer everybody here Monday through Friday, 40 hours a week, period. But because of that switch, and we have project managers, project engineers, what we discovered is that a lot of the, especially like estimators and whatever, they do their job on the computer and the network, right? And everybody has different circumstances. We have single moms, single dads that have children, and they've allowed a lot of flexibility for that population. Okay. But I don't know, it's a mixed bag because there's been, and then we have to deal with, I would say, employee jealousies of, he has this, but I don't have this, and I'm been considered essential staff, and that's our accounting department and the HR department. And, you know, we're essential staff, so we're considered, we have to be here, boots on ground, Monday through Friday for the schedule. So it's gonna be very interesting because we're gonna be moving into a new location in the next year or so, and the executive team seems to have this thought process. When we move, that's when we'll do it. That we will say all hands on deck Monday through Friday, 7 to 4, 7:30 to 4. And it's gonna be interesting because I keep hearing these individual managers, account executives that have these like little special one-offs, exceptions to the rule. So it's gonna be, I don't think it's possible to do it like that with a sweeping motion of saying everybody here. I really, and I think if that's tried, we're gonna get pushed back and people will be walking out the door.
Mm-hmm.
But everything I'm reading from SHRM and the wonderful media out there is that all those executive types and CEOs are saying, we want everybody in the office. But on the flip side, the worker bees, us people with the boots on the ground, are saying, look, we discovered we can function. You just need to trust us and get the job done. And if we can't get the job done, then it's your fault because you're not mentoring us or giving us expectations, or, you know what I mean, managing us like you should be doing.
Mm-hmm.
It's like a lot of our managers just want people to hit the ground running with no training. They have the experience and education, but they don't want to mentor, they don't want to train, they don't put up expectations. And so then they're shocked when people are starting to push back and saying, I'm not coming in because I've realigned my life and I'm answering an email at 11:59 at night because you sent it to me and said this is an immediate, right? And then responding at 4 o'clock in the morning. I'm salary, but you know, so it's gonna be interesting.
Yeah, it is. Has anyone else been dealing with the kind of mandate everybody comes back, or that it's a future date and time, or the rumblings behind the scenes? Might even have some advice for Teresa. So nobody really, or are you all going through the same thing? You don't have any advice because you're struggling with it too? Now that my microphone's working, yours isn't. It's supposed to be funny, I hope.
It was
And you
like,
know, I was going to say, Teresa, one of the things that that keeps resurfacing over and over again, though, is the concept of what's the business need? What's the business reason for bringing everybody back? And really being able to articulate that, and whether that is company-wide and it's a message from the higher up, or whether or not that is a scenario of managers, why our department, what's the business need? And we've got to be very clear, very concise, and firm in terms of that. And there's no doubt that you need to plan for, think about the pushback, because there already is. Um, and in some respects, what's the messaging? What questions can we anticipate? What's then our answers and responses to those? And keep in mind, one of the things that is transpiring right now is when you have the rumblings of a manager, more than one manager, you give it the title you want, who is doing the one-offs. And I understand what they're saying, but that's not what we're going to do, or that's not what I don't like it. To some degree, I mean, it is, but to some degree, we're throwing those other people under the bus. That wasn't my decision. I don't really abide by that. It was them. And then we're not a holistic, whole, well-oiled team, leadership team, executives, whatever, because these other things are happening. So then, boy, this is starting to sound like a little like preaching, and we need to move on a little bit like our culture is not where we want it to be, because what we're not talking about or how we handle things or kind of tells us a little bit about ourselves. So you guys all need to be on the same page. Everybody needs to be on the same page. Because one of the things that people are still talking about in terms of this remote stuff is, where are our biggest challenges? And so, Teresa, maybe some of this might help with some of that conversation. And this is the, home office hybrid. Where are we still experiencing those gaps? And here's the only word that I would offer as a mantra of sorts: intentional, or intentionality, from the standpoint of, be very intentional in our communication, very intentional about why we're asking for anything. And Teresa, I loved your answer around expectations. If they haven't been shared, if they haven't been uniformly understood, um, if people haven't had a chance to kind of ask some questions about it. However, there's also train to those expectations, reinforce those expectations, because to me, that's a foundational piece. If we set the expectations and then follow through and follow up on those and hold people accountable.
That's my biggest struggle, is
Yeah.
that managers want to, they want the people to hit the ground running, right? They don't set expectations. They have a job description that everybody signs off and looks out for a second. But then the manager gets frustrated with their behaviors, but doesn't say anything to them, does not address it. But then they're in my office. Suddenly, I want to terminate this person because
Yep.
I asked, well, why? And what have you done? Do you have any counseling? What have you done? I've done nothing. I'm just frustrated and I want them gone. I'm like, okay, so who are you going to replace? Well, that's why I have you. You need to go recruit somebody that's going to fit my needs. So like, well, then we're going to be talking in another 6 months. If I can get anything, because right now I'm recruiting for a payroll position. I had 69 candidates, and out of those 69, I had 4 really good solid ones. You know what they told me? They told me, I don't want to come in at all, not even to learn your culture. I want to live in California and Arizona, and I want to work as a payroll specialist because I'm just doing data entry. So on the flip side, no, that's not going to work because you don't even know us. You don't know our system or our process. So I'm feeling it both sides.
And there's so much to unpack there. So maybe we can chat afterwards, because there's some takeaways there. So those that would like to kind of hang out afterwards, we can do that for a little bit, because those are some good observations, Teresa. And I might even have a thought coming up here in a slide or 2 or 3. So part of looking at these is, how are we doing as an organization? Are we talking about these things, managers, supervisors? Because taking a look at that communication piece, again, intentional. What are we doing? Because I've even had organizations who say cameras must be on at all meetings for everyone. And then I've got other people, whatever fits, whatever works. How are you feeling today? Because if you're like sick and not doing well, the rest of us really don't want to see that. You know what I mean? So feel free to put in the chat box. And I think I seen one chat pop up there. And let's face it, with the passage of or speed of change and activities, sometimes economy related, sometimes business related, sometimes and the whim of a CEO, you never know what's kind of happening. But back to some surveys. Gartner does. If you don't know about Gartner as a resource, trend provider of information, educational kind of stuff, they're a really good source. I tend to turn to them for data on a regular basis as a consultant and trainer. But employees feeling like they're not empowered, that they can't make decisions, or they don't know what's going on, that they're not willing to jump on board because it seems like every time I turn around or I can't quite finish anything, something else is happening. They're feeling fatigued and overwhelmed by just the pace of change. So their report that just came out at the beginning of this year, which is why I was having the program in February, is because data was coming out in January. Fatigue, which is kind of back to our wellness, is having a huge impact on our employee outcomes. Look at that. 42% said they're less likely to stay with our organization. That'd be a lot of individuals. So when we talk about less willing to share innovative ideas or share information, all of that, that's not good. Trust that they're less our performance, our output. So when we think about where some of the things that we might want to kind of think about is just how do we identify these things from a what's driving people, what's going on in our organizations, what do we anticipate in terms of 2024, and changes? What's on the horizon? I just spent the last several months working with an organization down in Gold Beach, California. And so they're 5 hours away. And I was driving down about every 3 weeks to do supervisory training with them. And they are about to embark. One of our sessions is all about change management because they're about to embark on a whole new internal system. And so training is starting for that here in a couple of months for every single employee. And they were also thinking about how do our employees learn? So not only do they have a rollout in terms of the order of employees, which some of you have probably done based on your size, who goes first and how much time does that take? And maybe even who on staff are like faster learners, the people from who absolutely need to know this. To one organization we worked with, one person from every department absolutely had to be on the front end of learning stuff because then they were going to be able to help. Two, how do you learn best? Do we need to be able to have screenshots? Do we need to have the long written out version? Do we need to have this also audio recorded? How are we going to do all this training to make sure that it's so when we think about change and activities and what's going on, then when somebody leaves or sets us somebody and more work comes on, but nothing comes off my plate, how many hours am I already putting on? The job description is just changing in general. Is this job even built for someone to be successful? Let alone the things that we can do, which is truly empathizing with people, right? Are employees willing to own challenges and their own feelings and own that they actually might be able to move into the last column, which is own stuff that I might be able to think about things differently, or that I might be able to do this differently, or I might be able to save my time. And so what are going to be our strategies or ideas or thoughts about how to help manage through the change, deal with the struggles? One of the ideas from the group that I was working with is that we took the conversation around motivation, recognition, well-being, going through the change, going through the upcoming change with their program, that that one of the things they might do is do like chair massages, and someone else wanted some sound therapy. And so we did this whole exercise about let's bring some recognition element to then well-being. Can we combine them together for some recognition programs, some recognition activities during this time of change, during this time of the change activities, so that people feel better physically, feel better mentally, and that we're being extremely intentional about what we're doing and why we're doing it, and where it's getting us to, and how we can help employees through it. So it was a really good conversation. I just wonder whether or not, please chime in. Chat box is available. Unmute yourself. Are you guys going through some major change, anticipated change this year? Is this a topic about how to deal or go through it or do better than we did the last time? Okay, caller number 3. Thank you so much for calling in. I have no idea what's going on the other end, you guys. So you didn't think I was just going to spew a bunch of information at you, did you? I said conversation at the front side, yes? All right, so let's break this up into another category around like talent, skills, resources. Now, this is kind of where for some of you we left off last month, was just talking about the fact that for our friends to the north in the state of Washington, we've got some new laws around pay transparency, and they're not really that new. It's just that if we think that something's happening in Washington, maybe we should think that it's not going to be that long before it happens to Oregon and California. So my question to you all is, because of that, and let's face it, navigating some of these developments is not easy, and establishing, compliance around these things, I think we can write policy around it, and the communication around some of this, the whys or the failure to do so. But I think there can be some great benefits to this, and I'd be interested in hearing your ideas first. Um, you know, have you been talking about pay transparency at all in terms of what it would do for you? What are the benefits of pay transparency? And are you talking about it inside your organizations? And is anyone doing it? Are you putting out pay right out there? Not just pay ranges, but being a little bit more specific about that in advance of a job offer?
It's addressing it specifically in the job offer when we do the recruiting and we're posting it, it is a pay range. And then once they get into that discussion of the candidate, what their expectations to match a candidate. We've been trying to, ever since that law came out, to work on a plan. There's nothing like an Excel spreadsheet. You know what I mean? That says pay level, like a government, like this pay one gets this money for this amount of years, right? But they are trying to be mindful of looking at the current employees. So if you're a current employee and you're a project engineer, they will look at the current project engineers, what their wages are, what their education is, and then they try to make sure that they come up with a number with the candidate that fits their experience and their education, and try to make sure kind of fits within that band, if that makes sense. They started on working on one division where they actually built a spreadsheet. They built pay bands, I guess is what you would call it, but it kind of like got shelved during COVID. And so that there hasn't been anything formally done. But I do know that they are very mindful of making sure that, based only on the candidate's experience, education, what they're bringing to the table, and including the benefits that are provided, but trying to put that in that formula. So there's no worry of accusations of, well, I'm a female and I have 15 years of project engineering experience. And I was talking to Joe, who's your other project engineer, who has 5 years, trying to alleviate that conversation. But if they do bring it up, we hope that then that the team has an opportunity to talk to that person. And a lot of times what happens is that they talk at the water cooler and they tell each other, I got this, you got this, you know, I got this, whatever. But then they never asked the management they never directly come and say, hey, can you explain to me how did you come to this number? It always seems to be at their level, and then they're either too worried or too scared of whatever I'm not bringing up. So that's my frustration, is like, if you want to have a wage increase, or if you want an explanation, well, look, just ask the people. At least in our organization, I'm pretty confident that you can do that.
Sure.
That's my perception. I could be wrong, but I just think that you as an employee, also including myself, has the responsibility to at least give them a heads up and say, look, I'm looking at this. So,
Right.
but we don't have a formal plan. We do not have a formal spreadsheet or, you know, standard operating procedure for that.
Okay. Yeah, and based on the size of who's here, some of you do and some of you don't. So, other observations in terms of the benefits of pay transparency are, she says, there's a question. Do you think there are benefits? Do you think it's all negative? Some of the research suggests that greater accountability for pay differences. I mean, like, why are there? Are there any? You know, making sure if there are, then we can accurately reflect why. More applicants who are in alignment with who we are, what we do, what the job is. Increased competition for job openings. That could be internal and external. Employee trust. Increased employee trust becomes like one of the within the top 5 answers when anyone at all levels is asked about pay transparency. So the experts say improved employee satisfaction, streamlined conversations, especially around advancement or promotions, because things are more, as you imagine, transparent, right? Sometimes some of the data suggests that there's more of an inspiration for advancement because things are more transparent. So, and keep in mind that, let's see, Washington, Colorado, California, Maryland, and Connecticut, as of June of last year, all have pay transparency. So again, Washington, California, who's sitting in the middle? What do you think's coming our way? So if you aren't talking about it, I suggest that you should be, because we better to be ready for it and have some thoughts in mind than having you start immediately from scratch, because I think we've all been there. These things pass, and it's not like we've got a year to get to it. It's like, oh, and that upon signing now or within 90 days has been a high tendency for many of our new passages of law. So I know you have to be talking about this one. So let's weigh in. What are you doing when it comes to skills over degrees? You notice I didn't say versus degrees. So are you hiring skills over degrees? Have you gotten rid of your four-year degree requirements? Obviously, many jobs might still require degrees, licensure, certifications for any number of reasons. On the table, understood, got it. Many candidates do not have the higher degree, don't choose to pursue it for any number of reasons. Okay. All that understood. What are you guys talking about inside your organization?
Hey, this is Hannah. We have been doing internal pay equity analysis for our existing employees as well as our new hires. And so over the last 4 or so years, we've implemented or are using a newer process to us for placing new hires in our wage scales based on their education and experience. And so through creating that process, it's sort of like a formula, but we basically have like a way to determine equivalency. So if the job
Okay.
has the minimum qualifications of like a bachelor's degree, for example, and 2 years of experience, we've established a more objective way to determine what's equivalent to that if they don't have a degree.
Okay.
So like how many years of experience would be needed to make up for the lack of the degree. And then trying to be more consistent when we are putting jobs out and reviewing that information so that jobs of a similar level have similar requirements. So that organizationally, no matter which department or job we're looking at, as you go through sort of the different classification levels, that those things are being measured similarly.
Gotcha. Okay. Okay.
And
So,
that seems to have helped as far as our ability to hire competitively with our current situation. Our pay is not the highest usually for the market that we're competing with. And so having a way to bring people in, not always just bring them in at step one, but having a more realistic measurement of their skill and experience, and then comparable to those who may already be on staff
okay.
as well. Yeah.
Okay. Well, and I also like the fact, Hannah, that you recognize that competitively you might not be where you may want to be in terms of salary, and knowing where we are in the market is important because you may not be where you want to be in terms of pay. How are we in terms of benefits? Even though we're talking about total compensation, total rewards, there's an element here of where might we be, because I've not-for-profits often have some nice robust benefits, but the pay is on the lower side. So in fact, I was talking to somebody last night whose daughter is 28 years old, works for a healthcare system, and doesn't want to leave because the benefits are so good. Pay, but the benefits. So being able to kind of know where we are in the market, then how does that also measure out when we talk about not only the transparency, but the communication of our benefits, right? Side note. And when it comes to being able to think about the skills, I'm fascinated by what you decided were the equivalent points. What did you take into consideration or make those determinations?
Yeah, that could be a longer conversation, but in short, we try to have at least three of us involved in assessing it so that it eliminates just like one person looking at it and potential bias or anything. And so there's a couple of us who aren't involved in that department that's hiring, and then as well as someone in the department. So we have that piece. And then to determine the equivalency, it's basically trying to assess whether their work experience is comparing apples to apples for the job that we're hiring them. And so if it
Okay.
is like they have a year of experience doing that exact type of work, that would count similarly as to 1 year of education. If the work experience is only sort of related and it's sort of a sliding scale there, then we sort of score that appropriately. And so there's a lot of discussion usually in those analysis of how do you determine how similar one job is to another, and how do we do that in the most objective way possible with information provided by those candidates?
So if I understood you correctly, you said not only do you have a couple of people from the department, you have somebody from like HR that are kind of going through these questions or thought processes to make sure that we're thoughtful about bias and consideration and different points of view.
Correct. Yeah. So we have some consistency there from the HR team and looking at the process itself and making sure that we're sticking to it. And then more of the technical expertise, usually from the hiring manager. If there's questions about like how similar is this person's 10 years of experience doing this exact job that they've put on their resume compared to the job that we're hiring,
Okay.
and trying to be consistent in evaluating that.
Okay. Okay. I like it. I'd be interested to know whether or not, and you should put something in the chat box, what you're doing or how you're doing it or what your kind of considerations are, or maybe you have questions for Hannah, because those are the kinds of things that I think when we think about what does it really take to do this job? We can do the job analysis before we're even like doing job descriptions, which is a good, those JAQs are a wonderful tool to be able to help us. Well, now is a really good time to be asking some questions. I always know when we would do those that we would ask someone who is in the job, what does it take to do this job? And their requirements and skill level were like up here. And when you would ask the manager, what does it take to do this job? What skills do you need? They would be like, and so in some cases, not all, in some cases, there's been like a flip, like managers like, oh no, they need to have all that. And you're like, um, I don't think they need all that. And oh no, they need to have all this. And the answer is maybe not. So being able to look at what are we doing and how are we doing it from an internal mobility standpoint? Are there, what's our internal training process? I read somebody's employment resume kind of objective, not objective, accomplishments. And one of the things that they talked about was creating an onboarding strategy process, a whole initiative and creating it, doing it, implementing it and everything. Never been done, never had one before. And now the level of retention is. So they were, relating all of this. Onboarding gets us better retention. So when we think about internal mobility, what is that looking like? Because people are sticking around longer. They have an interest in. We're mentoring, developing, we're growing, we're stretching our people. So what's the learning curve that it takes to get up to speed? What's the learning curve in terms of progression of people within our organization? Do we want to have career development here? Do we want people to have careers, right? I know several of you, the kind of organizations that you're working for, and the answer is yes. So what's our talent pool looking like? I mean, in some respects, if we think about the talent shortage, do we have people in-house that we can develop and move in? And can we move people around as opposed to going to the outside? What about career pathing? And not the traditional old method of career pathing, right? Where it was like, and some of us, and again, I don't know everybody and I can't see you, so I don't know how old you are. So I'm just going to reference my age. Some of us are of an age where we remember when there were no mobile devices and you had a map and it was a piece of paper. And I think about career pathing like that. Like, here's your starting point, and we got to do this. Okay. And the answer is no. How about if we think about this more like satellite navigation? And that you have so many options, and now you can see them all. And how do we get, and what's the shortest distance? And oh, wait, look, that could be a potential roadblock, or there's an accident ahead. So you're going to want to go a different way. So that we think about this career opportunity or the directions or how many different ways there are to get someplace and how many programs and mentoring and how about learning on your own opportunities there are that we can get you there, that there's other paths. There's not just one way. And from an educational standpoint, there's not just one way to get those skills. And there's not just one kind of way of thinking or learning. So as employers, this can be a big deal. And if you haven't thought about this, if people are not going to four-year degrees and they aren't spending the dollars for that, and there's lots of ways of learning, I think one of the things that we're also needing to think about is there will be more on the job learning coming our way than there has been in a really long time. And our managers and supervisors need to get prepared for that. And so one of the things we got to be thinking about is not only digital upskilling, but just upskilling in general. And with the World Economic Forum, another place I really like to get information. According to them, in one of their most recent reports, 93% of organizations retain existing employees will retain existing employees in response to shifting skill needs by adopting kind of a train forward approach. So the idea is what's coming, need to get people trained, that they're not waiting till it's too late. not waiting until it's too late, that we need to prepare our workforce. And our youngins, our younger generation, they've grown up with a lot of this digital stuff. Well, if more and more things are becoming automated, more and more things are digital, more and more things are in your hands and you can mobile with everywhere you go. I'm sure I'm using all the wrong terminology. But the idea is if more and more of that's happening and we are living longer and we are not retiring as soon as, that means all of us need to make sure we know how to use this. So, and one of the things I didn't share with you, if you ever come to our programs, the PowerPoint will be shared with you post-program along with a link for the recording that you can then watch later or share with others. So just know that that's a thing. And if you're taking pictures, great. If you want to wait till it comes out, great. But this will be a follow-up process to the program as well. So I put some notes in here about what's the difference between reskilling and upskilling. So you can take it back and have it discussions. You can talk a little bit more about it with others in some fashion. But when we talk about these things, teaching people new skills or helping them tweak existing skills, optimizing what they already know so that they can be even better, more efficient, faster, more effective in what they're doing is a big stinking deal, let alone being able to have people, what we used to call cross training, that we're calling cross skilling, and actually learning new skills, right? And so what are we doing and how are we doing it inside our own organizations to make sure that we're meeting the needs of our workforce, but our workforce for the organization? Workforce planning. What's coming? What is our organization going to need from us? Where is it going? Not in 2024, not even in 2025, but beyond that, where is this organization going and what is it needing? What is it going to need from its workforce? Do my people currently have it? And if not, what do I need to do to help them, our training department, if we have one, my managers and supervisors, to help them get there? Because this is where we be going. And if I don't even know what our skill sets are, how do I know? And are we doing kind of a needs assessment with these folks? Because if this isn't where we're kind of headed, layoffs? Are any of you talking about layoffs? You can show me the emoji. You can put something in the chat box. Because I've had a couple of clients where this is a thing. In fact, one of them, let's see, this is mid-March, I think March 1st, just before March 1st. One of the people that I know really well went to work that day, and the owner of the company shared with them that they were going to let 10 people go. And they were like, what are you talking about? That is the second employer that has told me 10 people, but it's not the second employer who's had that conversation that was either work related or private related. And the first one that I mentioned, nobody had an inkling. The owner sees the numbers in the books, so to speak, and is worried. And the person that I was talking to also is very familiar with the books, and the answer is doesn't believe there's anything to be worried about. Two different perspectives. However, also not only two different perspectives about what's going on with the business, but two different perspectives about how to handle it. One's immediately reaction was, let's go ahead and cut people. And the others was more like, and I think there's a proactive and a reactive to these things, being able to give people notice, and do we know that it's coming, and are we communicating well enough inside? Because usually the business owners know something's coming. But that we need to be kind of reset our minds to be proactive versus reactive. But what things can we cut? What processes? What non-emergency, non-essential kind of budget dollars can we cut? What contracts? What outside? Maybe there's certain, we were talking benefits earlier, but what benefits aren't really being taken advantage of, aren't being used? Do we need to make those? to just reevaluate those promotions, pay raises, everything's on hold, frozen, cut, not happening right now for the foreseeable future. Furloughs, job shares. Do we do job sharing? I have a sister-in-law who did that for nearly 20 years, and that worked perfectly for her. Early retirements. Do we go through all of those alternatives and options and ideas and thought process and then work the numbers? Work all the numbers, think through the strategy before we ever get to even one name on the list. Have we looked at all of those? And I'm not saying you guys have or haven't, that you think like that or don't. I'm simply sharing there's way too many of these headlines in the news. 2, too many phone calls in our office about these topics. And 3, too many of my friends talking about these things to not be a thing. So if you aren't, you probably need to be talking about it here if someone starts to come to you and approach you. And earlier, Teresa, I believe you were talking about my managers. Do they know? Do they not know? And I don't know that you use those words, but they're coming to you like, I want to be done with this person, and you find them, and it's your job. Well, not only do we need to have employee training on all kinds of things, more and more employers are saying, you know what, here's the deal. And David, you might be able to relate to this only from the standpoint of, I know you're not the competition, the other guys. Okay. So I say that to you. In that industry, and I've seen them make some changes, but in the finance industry, there's been a history. I don't think it's true for your organization, where it's kind of like you start here and the training just goes. And you have to like follow the rules. And maybe this is true for some of you too, or you've been places, or maybe through your upbringing in the profession, you have to have X amount of years of experience, or you have to have met this, or you have to have done that before you can, right? You have to. People are saying, you know what, here's the deal. You want to get to there? This is how you do it. Whatever you do, these are all the things you have to meet. You do it on your timeline. You have these requirements, you know what they are. We're going to give you the information ahead of time. You create the map. It's employee led. It's all out there for you. In addition to the mentoring or the coaching or the peer stuff or going off to classes or other continuing education and stuff, but it is, there's all kinds of micro learning opportunities, little snidbits that you can snid. Oh, brother. Little small segments that you can have on your website or any number of places in your learning systems if you have them, or heck, TED Talk, some LMS that you've bought, learning management system that you've bought, whatever it is. How do we get, they have options. They choose, they have options. They know where they want to go. And they've shared that with us because we're having conversations with them. Your managers and supervisors are, okay? And so how are we making learning available to everybody in a variety of ways? And that includes our managers. I cannot reinforce to you how foundational and pivotal these people are to almost every single topic that we've talked about. They communicate with the employees. They are the representative. They are your partner in risk management. And yet, a lot of folks are not giving them what they need as soon as they become managers and supervisors, or even like when we're anticipating they will be. A lot of people are giving them training well afterwards. And it's been baptism by fire, and the habits have already started. And then, to be perfectly honest with you, we get phone calls. No, they haven't done that. No, we didn't do that. No, I didn't ask that. And it's like, no, my manager doesn't know. It's like, why don't they know? Well, we meant to have the training. Well, we meant to do onboarding. Well, we got caught with. Well, actually, I don't, because I wasn't there. This is just what I'm going to call the essential skills. This isn't even half of what I think that they need to be knowing and doing. But 75% of HR leaders say their managers are overwhelmed. overwhelmed by the growth of their job responsibilities. Now, Gartner didn't ask how HR is doing with the overwhelmingness of their growth job responsibilities, but I'm sure it's coming. I'm sure it's coming. But organizations, leaders, and managers don't, they agree themselves that 73% of them say they're not equipped to deal with all the change that's taking place inside the organizations. Maybe this is where the value of a performance review comes in, right? The value of the one-on-one conversations. How are you doing and how's it going? And all that good stuff in between. So I'm just saying there's a thing there. And then honestly, the last topic I had was technology. And I mean, you notice why it's last is because we could probably talk for days about this, but a lot of people are saying that the organizations are lagging. I've got some organizations that are totally embracing things, and I've got several organizations that I've worked with, and they've got one or two people inside the organization that is scared and afraid of AI, that have made outward comments about work and jobs being replaced. I know it's uncertain, absolutely, and you guys are probably having some of the same conversations. HR, 60% of us, according to Gartner, say that we're uncertain about what all of this means and trends and how it looks. And yet there are so many folks that are like, this is going to make my life easier. This does make my life easier and faster. And I think part of our conversation last time before you guys were talking about, and David, you're the only one who would know, but you were talking about how it's being used or what you're doing with it, or what benefits you have found for it, how you all are using it. I took a couple of notes that you guys that there was some uncertainty, and I think people were talking about. Oh, I took some notes someplace, but I'm not sure I'm going to remember now where I put those. Do you recall some of the observations that came out about this as we wrap up our time?
Put me on the spot. I'm not
I know,
remembering
I'm
off the
sorry. I
top of my head. No,
tried
no, no.
to.
It's all good. But I was going to say, I think it was a comment because you're right. It come up a little bit. I also think it would be a really fascinating topic for another, of these get-togethers to really dial into like AI in particular, because I think that concern, both what it's going to bring and what it's going to remove, is going to be huge for us as we go forward.
Okay. And I've thought about that. I brought in Monique Little last year, and we talked a little bit about AI, but we talked a little bit more about it from a finance standpoint, because she's with a credit union too. And I was hoping we would go in a little bit slightly different direction. So I was thinking that we would talk about that, and like, do you have policies around that? And so I did want to write down what you said. What were the words that you used? The pro and the con, but it was different words.
Yeah, what are we going to gain? What are we going to lose in the workplace from the perspective
So,
of organizationally and also from the perspective of the employees, I think. There's a
did,
lot of juicy stuff to dig into, I think, on that line.
yes. Is that what you said, gain and lose? I thought you said other words.
What are we going to get? What are we going to lose? Something like that.
Dang it. I need to learn to shut up and listen. Um,
I'll never learn that either.
because I was like, oh, I should, and then I was going to say, can I use that for what the name of the program is? So there's something in there, Dave. Something in there. Anyway, so just when we think about AI, I think one of the things to think about is that, I mean, I don't know if you guys remember, when was the first time you started learning a software program, or working with the group that I'm working with down south with this whole new program. They've got a couple people who are resistant. So it's not a lot by any stretch with the number of employees they have. So how do you deal with that? And comfort level. Anytime we're learning something new, and that's what AI is something completely new and different. And if you think about, it's just a new generation of your new phone, your new this. How do we go from, the oven to a microwave? We've got things to learn. There's no doubt about it. And I'm not saying that it's super duper easy and that we shouldn't be cautious. I'm not saying that at all. But the speed within which one can write an article, one can create a policy, one can ask it to review with a certain set of scopes and ideas, or kind of lenses, the eyes, to anything that you're creating is fast. Does it still need your eye? Yes, because you're the expert in HR or in your area. But to help you have a different perspective, to look at something, to get started without that blank page, come on now. I think that's awesome. And so how can you use it to be more effective and efficient, and and not be afraid of it? And how is it going to impact your work? And think about that and be honest about it too, right? So anyway, your thoughts or your observations, what are you guys dealing with? It's time for us to be done. It's time for me to wrap up, but I feel like, is anybody dealing with stuff? Okay, Jennifer, thank you. SHRM has a couple of programs out there, from surviving to thriving, promoting well-being. And so it's oh, and one on Chat GPT for HR professionals. Oh, I don't think I knew about the last one. Oh, that's good. Okay, so Chat GPT for HR professionals, and then surviving to thriving. That one I did know about. So thank you, Jennifer. I appreciate you putting that in the chat for us. Okay, that's the kind of thing that, like, resources that in the old days, when we talked about sharing resources, it was, publications or journals, websites, things like that. It's pretty simple, pretty easy, until the world exploded and everything is a resource these days. But this is a great place to share your resources and your ideas and suggestions and learning from each other. And so as we wrap up our time, I think I have one other slide in there for you for future reference. I just want to thank everybody for coming and for participating. And one of the things that I typically kind of like end our time with is, from a discussion standpoint, is there anything here that resonated with you? They're like, ooh, I better start working on that, or better start that conversation, or sharing the information with somebody, or sharing the concept of something and taking it back to our organization and saying, hey, I think we should talk about, or something sparked an interest. This is something we've been dealing with and it surfaced over here. And I know for me, if I hear something like 3 or 4 times, better start thinking a little bit more about where's that coming from. So thank you for joining me today. My name is Deborah Jeffries. I appreciate you joining me. And we will be having programs coming up April 3rd and May 1st. And apparently my topics are still to be decided, because we've had some last minute changes because of all of my scheduling changes. So if there's final questions, I'll stick around. But again, I'm going to say thank you. And again, you'll receive a follow-up email with an attachment for the PowerPoint and a link for the video as well. So thanks again, everybody. You have a wonderful rest of your day and your week. Take care.
Thanks, Deborah. Good to see you.
You too. Take care.
Bye.
You.
Bye.